What if everything you've been told about intelligence is wrong? For years, many of us grew up believing that IQ is fixed, that you're either born smart or you're not, that by the time you reach adulthood, your brain has already reached its limit. But history tells a very different story. Albert Einstein was once considered slow as a child. Charles Darwin struggled in school. Thomas Edison was labeled unteachable. And yet, these very people changed the way humanity understands the world. So what happened? Their genes didn't suddenly change. Their schools didn't magically improve. What changed were their habits, the way they trained their minds every single day. In this video, I'm going to show you several powerful habits that research suggests can actually make your mind sharper and your thinking deeper. And before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next video on building a stronger, smarter mind. The first habit that quietly trains your intelligence is something surprisingly simple: deep thinking without constant input. Today, we live in a world where information never stops. The moment you wake up, your phone is there, with videos, podcasts, messages, news, and endless scrolling. It feels productive, and it feels like learning. But here is the problem. When your brain is always consuming, it rarely has time to actually think. Real intelligence does not grow only from what you take in. It grows from what your mind does with it. Neuroscience has discovered that when your brain is not receiving new information, a powerful system becomes active. Scientists call it the default mode network. This network is responsible for abstract thinking, creative insight, long-term reasoning, and connecting ideas that previously seemed unrelated. In other words, when the outside world becomes quiet, your inner thinking becomes louder. This is something many great thinkers understood long before modern science could explain it. Albert Einstein often spent hours walking alone, with no music, no books, and no conversations, just silence and imagination. During those walks, he would run what he called thought experiments inside his mind. He would imagine chasing a beam of light or picture what might happen if gravity could bend space. These quiet mental explorations eventually led to ideas that changed physics forever. The important detail here is that he was not constantly searching for more information. He was giving his mind space to work. At first, this kind of thinking can feel uncomfortable. When you walk without your phone or sit without distraction, boredom shows up quickly. Many people immediately reach for stimulation, but that moment of boredom is actually where something powerful begins. Your brain starts asking questions, and it begins connecting memories, ideas, and problems in new ways. That is the moment when thinking deepens. A simple habit you can try is a daily thinking walk, just 15 or 20 minutes. Leave your phone behind, with no music, no podcast, and no input at all. At first it may feel strange, then it may feel boring, but if you stay with it, something interesting happens. Your mind begins to explore, and that quiet exploration is one of the hidden ways intelligence grows. The second habit that strengthens your intelligence is something most people try to avoid: struggling with a problem before asking for help. In today's world, answers are everywhere. If you don't understand something, you can search it in seconds. A tutorial appears, a solution appears, and the problem seems solved almost instantly. It feels efficient, but there is a hidden cost. When your brain receives the answer too quickly, it skips the most important part of learning: the struggle. Psychologists call this productive struggle. It is the process where your brain tries to solve a problem, fails, adjusts its thinking, and tries again. During this process, your brain is not just storing information. It is building stronger pathways that make future thinking faster and more flexible. Think about how a muscle grows. If you lift something that is too light, the muscle never changes. But when the weight challenges you, the muscle adapts and becomes stronger. Your brain works in a very similar way. Many highly intelligent people trained their minds through this kind of effort. Benjamin Franklin had a fascinating way of improving his writing. He would read a well-written essay and study it carefully. Then he would put the text away and try to rewrite the entire idea from memory. Of course, his version was often imperfect, but that was the point. Only after struggling to reconstruct the ideas would he compare his version to the original. That effort forced his brain to retrieve information, reorganize ideas, and refine his thinking. Over time, his ability to write and reason improved dramatically. Modern brain imaging confirms this principle. When you struggle with a problem before seeing the answer, deeper neural networks become active. Your brain engages with the material more intensely, but when you simply read a solution, the brain remains relatively passive. The information may feel clear in the moment, but it fades quickly from memory. This is why instant solutions often create the illusion of learning without real understanding. So, the next time you face a difficult question, resist the urge to immediately search for the answer. Pause for a moment and try to solve it yourself first. Write down your best possible explanation, even if you are unsure or even wrong, because that moment of effort, that uncomfortable moment where your brain is stretching to figure things out, is not a sign of low intelligence. It is exactly how intelligence grows. The third habit that sharpens the mind is something very simple, yet surprisingly powerful: writing to think, not just writing to remember. Most people treat writing as a storage tool. They write notes in order to capture information, a fact from a book, an idea from a podcast, or a quote they want to save for later. The goal is to keep the information somewhere safe, so it is not forgotten. But highly intelligent thinkers use writing very differently. For them, writing is not just a way to record thoughts, it is a way to discover them. When you write, something interesting happens inside your brain. Your thinking slows down. Vague ideas that once felt clear suddenly reveal gaps. Concepts that seemed simple become more complex, and questions begin to appear that you did not even realize were there. In other words, writing forces your mind to examine itself. One of the most famous examples of this habit comes from Leonardo da Vinci. If you ever look at his notebooks, they do not read like organized textbooks. They are full of sketches, unfinished sentences, strange questions, and fragments of ideas. One page might contain a drawing of a flying machine. Another might ask why the sky appears blue. Another might explore how muscles move the human body. At first glance, his notes looked chaotic, but that chaos was actually a living record of his thinking process. He was using writing as a laboratory for ideas. Modern research supports this approach. Studies from universities like Princeton and UCLA have found that writing by hand activates deeper levels of conceptual understanding. When you write slowly, your brain has time to process meaning, not just capture words. Typing and reading are faster, but they often encourage surface-level thinking. Writing, on the other hand, makes thinking visible. This is why many great thinkers keep what is often called a thinking journal. Not a diary about daily events, but a space to explore ideas. A place to ask questions such as, what do I truly understand about this topic? What part of this idea feels unclear? What assumption might I be missing? When you begin writing in this way, your notebook becomes more than a collection of notes. It becomes a mirror for your mind. And over time, that simple habit of writing to think can quietly transform the way your brain understands the world. The next habit that strengthens intelligence is something many people misunderstand: deliberate memory training. When people hear the word memory, they often think of it as a natural talent. Some believe they simply have a good memory, while others assume theirs is weak. But the truth is much more encouraging. Memory is not a fixed gift, it is a skill that can be trained. And more importantly, memory is deeply connected to intelligence. When your brain remembers information clearly, it can think faster, make better connections, and solve problems more efficiently. Imagine trying to build something while constantly losing your tools. That is what thinking feels like when memory is weak. But when information is easy to recall, your brain has more material to work with. Some of the greatest minds in history understood this very well. Nikola Tesla, for example, had an extraordinary ability to visualize machines entirely in his mind. He could imagine every part, rotate the structure, and test how it worked without building anything physically. His powerful memory allowed his imagination and reasoning to operate at a completely different level. Ancient scholars also took memory training seriously. Long before modern technology existed, Philosophers and teachers developed techniques to strengthen recall. They practiced methods that forced the brain to retrieve information repeatedly rather than simply rereading it. Today, modern neuroscience confirms why these methods work. Techniques such as active recall, spaced repetition, and visualization do more than help you remember facts. They actually reorganize the connections between neurons in your brain. With consistent practice, those connections become stronger and more efficient. One simple habit you can begin using is recalling information before reviewing it. When you finish reading something, close the book or put the material away. Then try to explain the idea in your own words. Speak it out loud, write it down, or even imagine teaching it to someone else. At first, this might feel difficult. You may struggle to remember details, but that effort is exactly what strengthens memory. Each time your brain retrieves information without help, the memory becomes more stable and easier to access in the future. So remember this. Memory is not just about storing knowledge. It is about building a stronger foundation for thinking itself. And when your memory becomes sharper, your intelligence begins to grow with it. The sixth and final habit that helps your intelligence grow is protecting your cognitive energy. Many people believe that being productive means pushing the brain non-stop, working longer hours, consuming more information, and staying mentally active from morning until night. It often feels like the more you push your mind, the smarter you will become. But the brain does not work like a machine that improves with constant use. In reality, the brain becomes sharper when effort is balanced with recovery. Some of the most brilliant thinkers in history understood this deeply. Charles Darwin, for example, did not spend the entire day working intensely. His schedule was surprisingly short. He typically focused on deep intellectual work for only 4 or 5 hours a day. After that, he spent long periods walking, resting, or quietly reflecting. Those moments of recovery were not wasted time. They were part of how his mind stayed clear and creative. Modern neuroscience explains why this matters. Your brain has limited cognitive energy. When you overload it with constant stimulation, stress, and lack of sleep, the systems respond in your side, responsible for focus, reasoning, and decision-making, begin to weaken. Over time, this reduces what psychologists call executive function, one of the core abilities behind intelligence. In other words, intelligence does not grow during constant mental pressure. It grows when the brain has time to recharge. This is why simple habits such as sleeping deeply, moving your body every day, and spending time outside in natural light are far more important than many people realize. Even boredom plays a role. When the brain is not flooded with stimulation, it has space to reset and reorganize. So instead of forcing your brain to work endlessly, start thinking of your mind like an athlete treats the body. Focus when your energy is strong. Rest when your mind needs recovery. Because a well-rested brain does not just work harder, it works smarter. So here's the truth. Intelligence is not something you're born with or without. It's something you build, one habit at a time. From thinking deeply, struggling through problems, writing to clarify your mind, connecting ideas, training your memory, to protecting your energy. These are not talents. They are choices you can start today. Now I'm curious about you. Which habit will you start first? Comment the word growth below. If this video helped you see intelligence differently, make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. I'll see you in the next video.